Welcome, everyone. Myself, Ainoa, and Pauline are going to be answering the question in our presentation today. Is the current most common shape and weight of a standard Bordeaux bottle, which is the industry standard for both red and white wines, the most sustainable way to store and transport wine? Our position based on our research is no. Next slide, please. I will be talking about glass as the material of choice for glass, for wine. Next slide, please. On the left, we're looking at a diagram of a very, very popular bottle used in the West Coast. This is the most popular bottle in Washington State. It is heavy. If you notice the weight, it's almost 800 grams. This is almost double the weight of a more standard consumer bulk wine. There's really two markets. There's the premium wine markets, which a lot of our presentation will be focused on. And then there's also the commercial bulk wine markets, which actually use a lighter weight bottle anyways. On top of that, we should consider the shape of the bottle, the fact that it's circular and that it's going into a square box. So there's a lot of loss of efficiency in that alone. Next slide, please. How we define sustainability. So we are hoping that the producer and also consumer will keep in mind that the wine bottle is a very energy-intensive material to produce, and because it's made of glass, as opposed to, say, aluminum or plastic. Coming from China, which is where a lot of our glass products are coming from currently. We do have domestic producers within the US and Europe, and also South Africa. But most of it is actually being imported from the Asia Pacific region. And they're using coal to fire their blast furnaces, which are on 24/7. They have to kind of maintain this thermal mass of molten silica. And so that in itself produces a very, very high carbon footprint. We also would like winemakers specifically keep in mind that as their wines become more expensive, they are sort of alienating a younger generation of wine drinkers. And whether we have sustainable bottles or not, we need to ensure that there will be a future wine market. Next slide, please. So if you are a wine producer and you're trying to figure out next steps, we're seeing major increases in the cost of labor, fruit, but also especially in glass. Right now, wine prices, like if you go to the grocery store, just in the last 2-3 years, you can really see, and this is above and beyond regular inflation costs, the cost of glass itself has really increased. And as a result, I think that it would be worthwhile for winemakers and large producers to kind of think about what their cost-benefit ratio is, sort of what is their return on investment for investing and putting costs towards sustainability marketing. So a lot of consumers are concerned about, this graph on the left-hand side here shows that consumers are interested in sustainability. And so if we implement sustainable marketing trends, we could potentially have a net benefit from the producers that are implementing these light bottles. So what kinds of within a highly competitive market where their marketing practices of using a heavyweight bottle are very sticky, and there's a kind of a resistance to change these things, what can producers do? And we think that definitely implementing a lighter bottle is an easy first step. I'm going to go ahead and pass you off to Ainoa. Thanks.
I'll be talking about bottle weight and transportation and the issue that this poses for sustainability. So the wine industry faces significant challenges in transportation, notably from the global supply chain crisis and the carbon footprint of transportation. Approximately 68% of a wine's carbon footprint is attributed to transportation, and the recent supply chain disruptions have really highlighted the need for more efficient and sustainable transportation methods, including considerations around bottle weight. Heavier bottles result in heavier environmental impact due to the energy that is required for their production and transportation. And so reducing the bottle weight, even by a few grams, can significantly reduce the emissions in large shipments and also lower production and transportation costs. As you can see by the graph on the right, this is especially important for Bordeaux wine bottles because they're already a bit lighter than Burgundy bottles, but do have greater GHG emissions. For instance, a study by packaging industry body WRAP in the United Kingdom found that reducing a bottle's weight from 500 grams to about 300 grams could save 30% of carbon dioxide emissions per bottle. And this reduction in weight can translate into significant economic savings and efficiencies, like increased number of bottles per shipment. For example, the Crimson Wine Group's efforts in reducing bottle shapes and transitioning to lightweight bottles resulted in a 300-ton annual reduction in their carbon footprint, really exemplifying the potential benefits of such initiatives. There is also a common misconception among consumers that heavier bottles indicate higher quality wine. However, industry leaders like Nigel Greening of Felton Road have argued that this perception is really just a myth and that consumer resistance to lighter bottles is overstated. His experience shows that even premium wines in lighter bottles have been well received in top restaurants without any decline in orders, indicating a potential shift in consumer perceptions. The increasing awareness of climate change and sustainable practices among consumers has really been influencing their choices. As can be seen by both these graphs, modern consumers are showing a growing interest and willingness to pay for products that align with their values, including how they are packaged. This trend really suggests that consumers are likely to support wineries that adopt sustainable practices, like using lighter and environmentally friendly packaging. Now I will pass it over to Pauline.
So not only is a bottled wine bottle unsustainable because of its use of glass and its weight in transportation, there are also more sustainable alternatives out there. The first one being with bottle weight reduction. So when we are looking at storing bottles for over a year, glass is necessary to preserve wine quality because it has the strongest barrier to oxygen. But even within that material, there's an enormous potential for weight reduction. An average bottle on the market right now is 500 grams, but the lowest one that's ever been achieved is 330. And as I know already said, that would incur a 30% CO2 emissions reduction per bottle. It's already been done a little bit in the bottled wine bottles, but only for a small part of the market, only their second wines, which are the lower quality wines. And it was only a weight reduction to 450 grams. So it shows that things are being done, but there's a lot more potential to do. Now, if we're looking at wines that don't have to be stored, there's an enormous potential for glass substitutes. The first one being PET or plastic bottles. Now, as you can see, the GHG emission per single piece is actually quite similar to glass, but where it really kicks in is that it's a lot more efficient because PET bottles are a lot lighter and therefore more bottles could be stored in a truck, up to 50% increase actually in transportation. Even more, there are flat bottles that are being put on the market right now that are even more ergonomically efficient and could therefore be, and a lot more could be fitted in a case. The second option is a bag in a box, which could lead to up to 40 to 70% of greenhouse gas reduction per kilogram compared to glass. And that's particularly good for bottles, wine by the glass in restaurants where packaging is not as important to the customer experience. And finally, there's aluminium cans, which is the most potent material right now in terms of sustainability, with 98% of recyclability rate. But it does pose quality concerns, mainly of the cans exploding, and also because of an acidic reaction between the metal and the wine, making the wine even more acidic than it already is. And that leads me to my final point, which is the marketing and potential customer costs that we need to be wary of when considering sustainability and economic liability. Because while switching from glass to another material will lead to a lot of cost savings, it also requires the customer to change its experience. It's not going to have a beautiful glass bottle to bring to dinners, for example. And so there will probably be added costs of marketing those sustainable bottles, which may actually even out with the glass savings. And finally, there's still this enormous issue of weight, particularly when it comes to high-end bottles, where weight is associated with quality. And maybe those markets are very niche and have quite a limited amount of customers, but the greenhouse gas savings and potential could probably still make a difference. And so if we can manage to get the whole industry on board, then we could actually make a bottled wine bottle more sustainable. So to conclude, no, a bottled wine bottle is not the most sustainable bottle that there is out there. First off, glass is a material that's very intensive, rising costs, and low recyclability rates. And in addition to that, it's very heavy, so there are high transport emissions and inefficiencies. And in addition to that, there is an enormous potential for other materials to be used for certain types of wines, and weight reduction when we're only looking at glass bottles. However, it is important to take into consideration that customer is king, and it may require a little bit of adaptation on his side, which may prove to be a challenge when we're looking at long-term consumption patterns. But let's not forget that man is an adaptable being, and that when it comes to sustainability, the effort will probably be put in. Thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing your questions on Monday.